Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only, Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations, while we're still playing through Sonic Generations Remastered version for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, and of course the Nintendo Switch, plus honorable mentions when it comes to Nintendo Switch successor coming up, all thanks to backwards compatibility, as what I somehow heard of that has been confirmed so far. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to be, conveniently enough, we've almost collected every single red star rings apart from one in particular exception. In addition to that, we also did manage to still collect some more Chaos, even though despite the fact that we missed a couple of them, that's just mainly because, like I stated before, that we have to take alternate paths to, you know, trying to find some more Chaos and stuff like that. So, relatively speaking though, I promise you for this point in time, is that today for this video, is that we're about to be going back into those abundance of levels for, presumably for the final time for reals, and so much so, we will definitely try to able to actually find the last few Chaos, as well as from that though, we're about to be trying to collect ourselves the final red star ring, and in addition to those, I'm also going to be tackling through hard mode in terms of several boss fights. This means it's also going to be includes the final boss coming up, which as a result though, yeah, stay tuned for that. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that there's nothing else I can really say about this, apart from the fact that I will try to able to actually describe about the huge differences between the hard mode compared to the normal mode, in terms of boss battles coming up. So, I digress. So yeah, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, obviously, if you couldn't tell already, is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 17th of January today, in some cases in 2025 today, so it may look like about the fact that there's nothing else I can really say. In terms of the forms of updates on any other games for that part, well, apart from the fact that no matter what though, is about the fact I also did manage to able to realize about the fact that, remember why I said this before, since and yesterday, about the fact that it is very unfortunate that Retro Studios is not involved this time when it comes to the forms of staff credit sequence in Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. So instead of that though, it's been replaced by Forever Entertainment, and usually relatively speaking though, is about the fact that on the staff credits on that particular most recent release of Donkey Kong Country Returns no longer mentions, well, specifically Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, that it no longer mentions Retro Studios, which to me though, it is rather disrespectful, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though is about the fact that Retro Studios, who was originally responsible for the sake of the forms of the original Wii version's release, and that was actually a pretty cool addition to the Retro Studios library of games, in terms of development cycle, although unlike the forms of how it does on the 3DS version, it's been entirely developed by a different developer, which appears to be called Monster Games, and now on the Switch version, so to speak, that has now been made by the likes of Forever Entertainment, and obviously though, similar to the forms of how it does it for most remasters for the Nintendo Switch lineup, they also did the same thing for the sake of the forms of ignoring the original developer for the likes of not only for Metroid Prime Remastered for the Nintendo Switch, and same applies with the forms of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD as well, because obviously that was about the fact that it's very unfortunate about the fact that the new developers has now been taken over in terms of the forms of the new staff credit sequence, which as a result though, yeah, it's pretty disrespectful, like I said as before, and jeez, I did not see that Chao from over there. Because, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that sometimes I do miss it a couple of times, but nothing even compared to the forms of how it does it whenever we get around on doing Shadow Generations at some point until probably also for next week or something like that. Obviously, that was about the fact that there is these specific collectibles that we do need to wander around aimlessly most of our time until we're able to actually guarantee to get something that's very rewarding. If not though, well, then again though, we have to wait and see what happens in due time, especially concerning for the fact that obviously that was about the fact that we're almost nearly at the end, in terms of Sonic Generations Remastered version right now, just before you dive into Shadow Generations, and so much so about the fact I can't even believe about the fact that everything else goes all like pretty quick at the same time. Well, usually I would say at the same time though, but sometimes though is about the fact that, well, chances are though is about the fact that trying to go through this entire process of the actual recording setup, well, it's not so bad in terms of, you know, capture recording, but it's just the amount of edits I'm gonna have to able to try to deal with. It's a bit of a lot of multitasking, you know. But luckily, though, like we've already established that before, luckily we are tackling through 2 games at a time instead of 3, so it makes things a lot more steadier more than anything. So, anyways though, there's also another thing else I would like to mention about this, is that fundamentally speaking though, is about the fact that I do somehow manage to realize it's been 20 years ago since, unfortunately though, that one of the English voice actors who did the voice of Dr. Eggman since Sonic Adventure all the way up to Sonic Advance 3, that Dean Bristow has been passed away since 20 years ago, since in the beginning of 2005, and after that though, they somehow managed able to make Mike Pollock as the actual primarily voice actor for Dr. Eggman during the course of in the later Sonic games, including several Sonic TV shows, like for instance though with Sonic X, and Sonic Boom, and also with Shadow the Hedgehog as a video game, all the way up to, well, Sonic X Shadow Generations. So, well, you see what I mean if we get on to playing through Shadow Generations. So, from now on though, as you can tell, we're actually going to be going on to a rival battle against with Metal Sonic once again, except now, I'm going to be go ahead and say this right now, we're about to be doing on hard mode this time. And I don't think there's anything else different about this battle on hard mode. I'm guessing the only changes for this boss fight though is that Metal Sonic's attacks are a lot more faster in comparison to the forms of how it does it on the normal version. At least that's what I was going to be thinking about anyway. And if you couldn't tell already, it's about the fact that the actual background music I did somehow change into, that's what appears to be what I made of from Sonic Heroes, concerning for the fact that in the final boss in Sonic Heroes, obviously though that Metal Overlord was actually body possessed of the forms of Metal Sonic, or should I say Neo Metal Sonic, because obviously though he does manage to copy data from any other teams, ranging from, well, the only ones we do sort of remember from Sonic Heroes whenever he did manage to copy data from is of course Team Sonic alongside with Team Dark, because I'm pretty sure it does not seem able to actually get spotted for the sake of the forms of Team Rose or Team Chaotix for that matter. Well, I suppose no matter what though, is about the fact that it's been quite a while since I actually have last played Sonic Heroes, since I fully managed to 100% completing everything in Sonic Heroes, both on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, even though despite the fact that I'm gonna have to able to restart my entire run on the GameCube version, just because obviously though I was trying to go for a genuine points tally, because I do know for certain for one thing that Sonic did somehow accidentally use the actual action replay back in the day, and as a result though is about the fact that we feel like that we somehow give up on the actual action replay stuff now, just because our life has been moved on. So as a result though is about the fact that we would like to able to play through those games genuinely, rather than just trying to able to unlock everything from the get-go, although the only time exception is of course both Super Monkey Ball 1 as well as Super Monkey Ball 2, just because I would love to able to experience those levels for myself. But it wasn't until when, you know, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania was now around. This means we can able to actually access to any other levels without need to worry about the forms of inserting cheat codes and stuff like that. So, because obviously though that game is more modern as opposed to the forms of how it does it back on the forms of the GameCube days, or technically with PlayStation 2 and Xbox, all things considered. So, anyways though, so as you can tell, we are about to be fighting against with the Death Egg robots once again, and this time we're going on to hard mode on this boss battle, and I suppose the only major difference with this boss fight though, and that's what appears to be how much hits he has. So obviously though is about the fact I'm pretty sure in the normal mode does have about, like, let's just say 4 hits, like phase 1 does have 2 hits, and the second phase 2 hits, and on hard mode, and I'm pretty sure he does have like 4 hits in phase 1, and still he able to actually has like 2 hits on the second phase, making a grand total of 6 hits to deal with him this time. So yeah, that's the only change in terms of the forms of the comparison of hard mode to normal mode, but still incredibly easy as far as you can definitely tell from the get-go, because obviously though you're still able to collect rings during the forms of on hard mode, because unlike in Shadow Generations though, oh, you must be able to stay tuned for that. If we go around on doing boss battles twice in terms of both difficulties, well, assuming of course that we do need to unlock it first. So anyway, I just want to make sure I somehow got everything when it comes to some stages, except for one Chao in Seaside Hill in Act 1. So hopefully though we'll try to find the one last Chao from the Dreamcast era. And kind of thinking about it though is about the fact that with this particular layout, or specifically how the actual parts are usually structured, in terms of the forms of this part in particular, as soon as we're able to actually collect not only every single red star rings, but as well as finding every single Chao in terms of certain eras, ranging from classic era to the Dreamcast era and the modern era, or if I like to call the Dreamcast era Green Eyes era, but that's just because, you know, like I said this before, since in Sonic Adventure, that basically though, Sonic now actually has green eyes, so makes sense for that regard. So anyway, let's get back into this particular topic for a second when it comes to the forms of this whole structure we're going to be able to try to utilize within this part, is that, like I said before, as soon as we're able to actually try to find every single not only red star rings in the era, alongside with every single Chao as well, then obviously though we attempt to save the forms of the hard mode variants of certain boss fights until later on. So yeah, that's what we're expecting to try to do for this point, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though that we still love to do some bit of challenge involved. So anyways, so if you couldn't tell already, it's about the fact that I somehow changed the music into Wave Ocean level music based off from Sonic 06, which appears to be, you know, inspired by Emerald Coast from Sonic Adventure, despite the fact that obviously though back in 2006 that Sonic Adventure wasn't even 10 years old at that point. So because obviously the first Sonic Adventure did came out like 8 years old when 2006 was around, but you know, every nowadays, since we're now in 2025, well, currently as of now, that obviously though is about the fact that the English version of Sonic Adventure has been out for 25 years, and meanwhile for the Japanese release, did somehow became 26 years old, alongside with the Dreamcast itself. So either way, yeah, I guess that makes it totally obvious for the sake of time. So anyways, let's go on to the lower path this time, and so much so, there's going to be a Chao in here somewhere, so hopefully we're able to obtain that, and once we're able to done every single aspect, in terms of the forms of Seaside Hill, we can now move on to the hard mode boss battle against with not only with Shadow, but alongside with the forms of Perfect Chaos as well. So generally speaking, it should be a little bit more interesting to say the least. So anyway, it doesn't really matter what rank we can probably get at that point, because obviously though we've already got, you know, the glorious S ranks during the forms of our first run through, so there's nothing we need to worry about in terms of screwing up most of our times. So anyways though, no matter what though, there's also another thing else I would like to mention about this, is that for those of you who lived in the UK, that it looks like we actually got ourselves a DVD release confirmed for the likes of Gladiator 2. And so much so, I believe that film is going to be releasing on DVD and 4K UHD, as well as the Blu-ray version, that I believe those versions will be releasing until the 3rd of March, which is going to be roughly the exact same time as when the Nintendo is going to celebrate the 8th anniversary of the forms of Nintendo Switch was first released during that time. So, yeah, it gets a little bit more exciting, at least as far as I do somehow realize about this, but still, we haven't exactly heard anything in terms of the forms of the actual game sales updates up to that point with Nintendo Switch 1, but then again though, we have to wait until for about a couple of days or so. So anyway, so now let's go ahead and deal with the rival battle against with Shadow on hard mode, and a perfect fit for a music track we're about to be choosing. That's what appears to be Live and Learn, concerning for the fact that obviously though is about the fact that Live and Learn is obviously the coolest song of all time when it comes to Sonic community, as well as that though is about the fact that again, we're probably not going to spoil things too much in terms of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie discussion, just because, well, I've already mentioned about the fact that if the DVD version is about to be releasing at some point in sometime in spring. So anyway, so as you can see on hard mode in the forms of Shadow the Hedgehog as a boss battle, basically though is about the fact that, well, as you can tell, rather than collecting 2 of those energy spheres, so instead we now need to collect 3 of them. So generally speaking, that's the only difference in between the normal mode and the hard mode variant of Shadow the Hedgehog as a boss battle. But regardless of everything else though, the entire battle remains the same as the Forms of Power does on normal mode. It's just about the fact that they added in an additional energy sphere that you do need to snag, and 2, able to realize about the fact that you can able to instantly try to KO Shadow as soon as you're able to actually try to catch up to him. So yeah, everything else will become to expect at this point, but hopefully though we can able to experience you know, not only Final Rush, but also Final Chase at the same time, until whenever we go around on playing through Shadow Generations at some point, until, you know, like I said before, until next week or so, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact I'm sure enough that tomorrow, that Blaze the Cat will definitely going to be going back on playing Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games for the Nintendo DS for sure, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact that still, that particular Let's Play has gone pretty smoothly so far, especially concerning for all that particular views that we somehow got in terms of that Let's Play so far with Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games on the DS version, because kind of think about it though, those particular series of Let's Plays of Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games series is actually getting a lot popular in our channel, much like the Forms of Mario Party. Well, I suppose no matter what though, it's because of their nostalgia factor, or perhaps even maybe because of the Forms of Power fact that they've never actually experienced several games before on one hand. So, although I may be wrong about that, but either way, let's just go ahead and where are these meteorites? Oh, wait a minute. Oh no. No, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. It's not gonna able to let me deal with Shadow at the end. It's not gonna count it. He's not gonna do it. No. No, 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 no. Oh no, this is bad. Oh, you kidding me? I can't do anything else. I can't do anything else. I'm stuck. At least Shadow has no rings, and I was gonna try to deal with the final blow, but I can only go left and right. All I can do is just go automatically going forward. What? I have no idea what's going on, guys. I have no words to say of what the heck is going on with this game sometimes. Well, maybe because of how the fact that the game tells me about the fact that I have to let Shadow obtain at least 1 ring, at least that'll do the job. Because as far as I'm guessing correctly, if Shadow got no rings, I'm essentially deadlocked. So, yeah, that was very unexpected, huh? Especially concerning for the fact that if I was trying to boost, he accidentally ran into me and he loses all of his rings. So, yeah, that was very questionable right there. Well, I don't suppose about the fact that I don't know if anyone else ever encounters that issue. Well, I suppose I did somehow manage to able to encounter it so far, but anyway, yeah, let's try this boss battle again, and hopefully we should be able to try to succeed without any sort of like, some weird thing has just happened earlier, so. But still, no matter what though, it's about the fact that this battle itself is pretty dang cool to me. Even though, despite the fact that, again, you do not let Shadow get 0 rings, because otherwise I'm essentially deadlocked, and as a result, that's why the meteorites has also been disappeared as well. Not just the meteorites, but Shadow as well, that he's also been disappeared as well, unexpectedly. So, yeah, I've got nothing else to add. So, anyway though, let's talk about the next thing we want to discuss upon, and that is about the fact that there's even more anniversaries coming up in terms of the forms of some game releases between 1990, 2005, 2000, etc, etc. The next game that we've already technically mentioned about this ever since around yesterday for some time That's what it appears to be. Not only that Metroid Prime Pinball is going to be celebrating 20 years since 2005 for the Nintendo DS, concerning for the fact that obviously though that game is basically a Metroid Prime themed pinball game that is almost inspired by Metroid Prime 1, because obviously though with all these familiar environments you can able to traverse into, and so much so, also around that time, there's also going to be the 15th anniversary of the game's release of Metroid Other M for the Nintendo Wii, despite the fact that that game received some very mixed reception, especially concerning for the fact that we'll pretty much have to talk more about that game if we get around on doing that particular Let's Play of Metroid Other M at some point, because truth be told, we've never actually done any of those Metroid series of Let's Plays in Journey Evolves within last year in 2024, and neither does Kirby as well. Plus, it's mainly because, as far as I'm aware, we did somehow manage able to become incredibly busy on playing through other games recently, ranging from, you know, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, alongside with the forms of Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake, Princess Peach Showtime, Luigi's Mansion 2, or in some cases the HD version of that game on the Nintendo Switch, and so much so about the fact that by that time until once we make our way to probably at some point in September, or should I say October, we can now able to actually decide to say that we can definitely decide able to do Luigi's Mansion 3 at long last for the Nintendo Switch, and that'll be pretty much about it in terms of the entire trilogy, at least for now, especially concerning for the fact that everyone else out there keeps on asking for the fact that if there's going to be a possibility of Luigi's Mansion 4 will be on Nintendo Switch successor or something. Well, again, time will tell, time will tell. So anyway, so let's get on to the Balls of On hard mode in Perfect Chaos boss battle. And I think, suffice to say, there's nothing different about this boss fight apart from one particular thing, and you'll see why as soon as we're able to actually try to kick, Perfect Chaos's butt. And straight to the point though, as you can tell, we somehow choose the background music based off from the original version of Open Your Heart, because it makes sense, concerning for the fact that obviously though, you know, inspired by the final boss in Sonic Adventure, assuming after you somehow complete all 6 story campaigns. So unlike in Sonic Adventure 2, they only need to complete two separate stories, ranging from Hero Side Story and a Dark Side Story. So anyways, oh, okay, it looks like we've come across into something different. So I suppose, rather than just take you to the exact same route as before, so instead we now ended up in a higher level of that familiar environments that we can somehow traverse into, and this is where things gets a bit tricky, but at the same time though, once you get the hang of it though, it's actually not too shabby for the most part. But aside from all that stuff though, the entire battle just remains the same as before, except the fact that it just takes you to a different section, as opposed to the exact same sections as the Balls of Power does in on normal mode. So I guess that makes it totally obvious for the sake of time. So, and also I just realized about the fact that we're never actually going to hear the second phase music in the background, because I'm pretty sure Open Your Heart original theme is going to play out throughout the majority of the time, so I guess I have no complaints there, especially concerning for the fact that, well, obviously that particular music will be brought back from the likes of not only from Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo Wii U, not the 3DS version, mind you, just because the 3DS version does have limited amount of song selections, so. But anyway, so far so good in terms of the forms of deathless runs, apart from few exceptions, which obviously though, because if you couldn't tell on Shadow Rifle Battle, that obviously though we've come across into this unexpected deadlock situation. So, but well, no big deal though, because you know, we've got a lot of extra lives into our disposal, thanks to the forms of the skill shop, and as well as that, revisiting the exact same stages again for trying to obtain, you know, Chao's and Red Star rings to top it off. So, but anyways, so I suppose no matter what though, I'm thinking that we somehow technically did miss one last Chao in Planet Wisp, even though I was originally trying to able to go into Crisis City, but then I figured about the fact that I was able to get this stage out of the way in terms of Planet Wisp, and thankfully though, this will be a true definition of the final time to be able to actually experience this stage, because like I said this before, I feel like that this stage is pretty underwhelming to me though, in comparison to the original version of the level from Sonic Colors, but that's just because of about the fact that, well, obviously though, like I said, we're able to actually come across into a multitude of stages with 6 acts and all that stuff, so I digress. So, yeah, that's basically how I can think about in terms of about the fact that we can able to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Metroid Prime Pinball for the Nintendo DS, and there's also another one of those games for the Nintendo DS that does manage to support the Nintendo DS Rumble Pack, which, assuming of course if you do manage to able to have not only the original DS model, but also with the Nintendo DS Lite, because, you know, DSi does not contain any of those Game Boy Advance cartridge slots, including the XL version as well, but the reason why we still managed to have the XL version at the end of the day, not only because of my comfortable factor with my hands, but on top of all that stuff though, I just love the bigger screen, and not to mention though, the colors look so much more vibrant, thus the sound quality is actually pretty top notch too. Plus, to me though, it feels a little bit more modern, in comparison to, well, don't get me wrong, I still love the Nintendo DS though, but I haven't exactly owned myself the DS Lite, plus it's mainly because, for what I can tell, that Sonic and Piglet did somehow tell me about this. Obviously though, at one time, though we used to have the original DS model back in 2005, alongside with the actual amazing bundle with Mario Kart DS, because that was actually a really good unexpected gift for Sonic's part, and so much so for the fact that, well, obviously it wasn't until in 2009 that we did somehow receive the original DSi, but at some point in 2019, for likely or so after 10 years since we somehow received the DSi, which appears to be the white color, we essentially moved on to the XL version, despite the fact that we could no longer try to download DSiWare games anymore, just because DSi shop has officially closed down since in 2017. Just, well, kind of think about it though, just because obviously though they still are supporting the 3DS in terms of not only online functionality, but alongside with the forms of the actual eShop itself as well. So, but anyway, so let's move on to the next game. They're about to be celebrating something related to its anniversary department, and next up what appears to be Rock Band 3, and Rock Band 3, at least for multiple versions as far as I'm aware, is going to be celebrating the 15th anniversary, so yeah, that's something. Although, to me though, I haven't exactly played that much of Rock Band in the past, plus it's mainly because we are very much limited in our room, and so much so for the fact that we attempt to sell not only the game itself, but alongside with the forms of the instruments that comes in with it, with the forms of not only the guitar, alongside with the microphone, because I'm pretty sure that, kind of think about it though, that was that familiar microphone that I believe back in the day, that I suppose that most of us did somehow use back then. Like, let's just say, for instance, back in 2015 for some time, that obviously though, Orange Teddy, at least as far as I do know, and despite the fact that most of these Teddy characters has now been left in our channel for now, just because, well, they just want to move on to the next generation, I suppose. So, I guess it makes it totally obvious for the sake of time. So anyway, and to top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that I do somehow manage to able to realize there's also the drum kit set, which it does contain like 4 different corresponding buttons, as well as the start button and etc. So at the very least that's that, as well as the forms from that. There's also this special USB connector which you can only use for the PlayStation 2, because I'm pretty sure on the PlayStation 3 version, I'm pretty sure it does the same thing, or something like that on those lines. Well, mind you, it's been ages since I actually have last played Rock Band from the PlayStation 2 version. Well, that's just only mainly because I'm not very great at the game personally, and not to mention though, the later difficulties, especially in expert mode, my god, is actually quite brutal to complete, especially if you really want to go for the best results. Likely, for instance though, if you really want to unlock any other stuff as far as I'm aware. You have to be super expert when it comes to timing your notes correctly, and not to mention though, you have to be super duper fast at it, and thus not to mention though, you have to be a lot more energetic compared to the forms of simply press the buttons in the simplest ways, and again, hard for me to talk about it personally. Speaking of which, in terms of Mario Kart DS, what I've noticed is that Mario Kart DS is gonna be celebrating 20 years of its anniversary of the game's release. So, yeah, we'll definitely try to celebrate that on a special occasion at some point. But let's not get about ourselves to this point right now, just because, obviously though, if you couldn't tell already, we're eventually going back into Crisis City for the final time, and so much so, we're trying to find the final Chao in this particular stage, specifically in Act 1, and then once we're done with that, we can able to actually head over back into Act 2 in Planet Wisp for reals, and hopefully we can able to obtain the final, well, I should say, the final Red Star Ring to collect, and so much so, it's going to be on a different pathway we need to take. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a marathon situation as far as I'm aware, especially concerning for the fact that, well, obviously though, that particular stage is ridiculously long enough as it is, but luckily though, we did somehow found the final Chao in the game. So, yeah, kudos to able to actually try to find every single last Chaos in this particular remastered version of the game, and now we just need to complete the entire level as normal. So, as long as we do need to activate the new checkpoint as opposed to the previous checkpoint, that's as far as we can able to describe about. So, anyway. Oh, and there's also another game that's also going to be celebrating its 25th anniversary, and that game was WWF No Mercy for the Nintendo 64, which I definitely heard of, but I've never actually owned a game for myself, but that's just mainly because, as far as I'm aware, Nintendo published games are my huge priority in terms of Nintendo 64 games to me though, but that's just mainly because the quality of those games, despite they aged quite well for some of them, but I will still say that playing Nintendo games is obviously super duper fun, not only for the Nintendo 64, but alongside with the forms of Nintendo GameCube as well. So yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting for mention about that stuff as far as you might as well say. So anyway, so now we've somehow rescued every single Chao in the entire Sonic Generations remastered version, so everything else checks out there. So yeah, all you need to do now is basically not only we can able to, you know, trying to find the final Red Star Ring as Modern Sonic in Planet Wisp in Act 2, and so much so, for the music track we'll go for, I was maybe concerning, I don't know, we'll stick with normal as it is, because as far as I'm aware, I just want to get this stage done before we move on to the last few portions of Sonic Generations at this point right now, just before we move on to the exciting part, which is of course Shadow Generations. So anyway, yeah, nothing else I can talk about in terms of trying to celebrate a 25th anniversary of WWF No Mercy, or every nowadays with the modern world, they just somehow now calls it WWE, because as far as I'm aware though, back in the day, they tend to call it WWF, so I guess that's why they somehow changed the name of that particular brand every nowadays. So at least that's as far as I can possibly think about. So anyway, and another game is also going to be celebrating its anniversary, which that's what appears to be the 20th anniversary, and that game in questioning was Shadow the Hedgehog. And not just Shadow the Hedgehog though, there's also the 20th anniversary of Sonic Rush as well, but that's probably going to happen at some point in November for some time. And meanwhile, when it comes to yet another anniversary with 35 years for its celebration of its release, and that game in questioning was Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom in Japan. That game is going to be celebrating the 35th anniversary since the game's release back in 1990 in Japan. And as also that game was actually the forms of the introduction into, without a doubt, is the most beloved character in the entire Mario franchise, and as of course, Yoshi. And not only that though, there's also going to be the 25th anniversary of Banjo-Tooie for the Nintendo 64, which, again, time flies, you know, especially concerning for the fact that after all, it's a good thing we did somehow manage able to obtain 2 of these versions of Banjo-Tooie, which obviously though, because back in 2018, that's I believe that Rarity did tell me about this, including Starlight Glimmer, for I can tell anyway, that they both somehow managed able to get the actual Nintendo 64 game cartridge of Banjo-Tooie within a cheaper price back in 2018, but thankfully though it still managed to work, no problem, so I have no complaints there, because every nowadays though is about the fact that since we're now in 2025, obviously though the game is going to get much more expensive, especially if you're trying to go after the complete in-box, and not only that though, don't forget me started in journey forms of the most recent ton of events, in terms of the forms of Piglet's Big Game, used copies nowadays, especially my lord. In America though, it's getting so much more outrageous in terms of this price tags right now. Like seriously, $200 for a complete in-box copy of Piglet's Big Game, not only for the PlayStation 2, but also for the Nintendo GameCube as well, and I was like, oh my lord, what the heck is going on with these scalpers? I mean, that's just insane, you know? Although still, luckily I still managed to get the game though, and that's why I'm probably not going to attempt to sell it anyway, just because, well, I'm just going to, well, say this right now, I'm keeping it that way. Especially concerning for the fact that we attempt to enjoy that game. It's actually pretty dang cool, despite the fact that that game is every nowadays that most people call it like a Resident Evil / Silent Hill clone, plus it's because of this very unexpected musical track choice. Journey involves in several locations, ranging from one of those locations in Owl's Dream, and also stabilized with the forms of Eeyore's Dream as well, and pretty much most of the dreams anyway, at least for I've noticing this already, so... But anywho, and there's also going to be the 30th anniversary of the original release of Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, and meanwhile, that could be also applied with Donkey Kong Land 1, for the Game Boy. So yeah, there's going to be a double celebrations for Donkey Kong, at least in one of those two games in particular. The next game is going to be celebrating its 25th anniversary, and that's what appears to be the Japanese exclusive Sin and Punishment, which eventually until 2007, that not only Americans can able to finally experience the game, but also stabilized with the UK version as well back then. Although, every nowadays as well, that game was now available for the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. So, at the very least though, for those of you who are really curious to try that game out, well, you can simply just do that now. So, anyways, and there's also going to be the 20th anniversary of the game's release of Animal Crossing Wild World for the Nintendo DS, so... At least technically the UK version has to wait until at some point in 2006, and also there's going to be the 20th anniversary of the game's release of Mario Luigi Partners in Time, aka Mario Luigi RPG 2x2 in Japan, so generally speaking though, yeah, I cannot wait able to celebrate that. And meanwhile, we've also going to be expecting to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the release of Mario Party 3, at least in Japan anyway, and all the while though, at the exact same time actually, that like I mentioned about this before in about a couple of parts ago, that we can also try to able to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the game's release of Mario Party 7 for the Nintendo GameCube, so... Yeah, once again, there's going to be a double celebration. Actually, no way. There's actually a triple celebrations, kind of think about it, in terms of the anniversaries of several Mario Party games. Like, I've already mentioned about the 25th anniversary of Mario Party 3 coming up, at least in Japan, and there's also the 25th anniversary of the game's release of Mario Party, 20th anniversary of the game's release of Mario Party 7, and there's also the 20th anniversary of Mario Party Advance as well. So, at least there are two games I was really looking forward to celebrating, except one, just because, to me though, Mario Party Advance is just a pretty terrible game to me, especially it's nothing like the forms of how it does or how good the Mario Party games are. Although I will still defend Mario Party 9, despite the actual gameplay mechanics are entirely different and most people don't really care about the game anymore, but at the very least the minigame varieties are still fun, alongside with the forms of some mini-games in Mario Party Island Tour, Star Rush, and the Top 100, and heck, even with Mario Party 10, But regardless of everything else though, is about the fact that, well, I suppose that particular topic can wait though, at some point in the future, once we're able to think about trying to celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise. So, yeah, that's as far as I was expecting. So as you can tell, we're going back into a rival battle against with Silver, or in some cases myself, but this time on hard mode, and I don't think there's any differences with this boss battle, apart from the fact that he now decides able to use his telekinesis for the sake of the forms of trying to carry some more objects with his psychokinesis, and there's also going to be one of those attacks is actually going to get a lot more faster. And so much so for the fact that the entire battle itself is basically unchanged in terms of how the actual battle handles. But I will admit it though right away that trying to able to catch up to Silver is actually a lot trickier to me because generally speaking, I was about the fact if you dare touch that particular object, as far as you can definitely see, you definitely gonna get hit. So yeah, that's definitely a lot more trickier, especially that, again, if you get crushed, then you instantly die. So yeah, you have to watch out for that. Ah, drat. I'll have to start over. Okay, so for those of you probably wondering how come I've somehow now got 97 lives as opposed to 98. Well, obviously though, if you couldn't tell already, I also have to restart this again, and so much so, I will admit, the ending is actually a lot difficult compared to the forms of how it does it on normal mode to me. Plus, it's mainly because, as far as I'm aware, maybe I was being hesitating too many times, but hopefully though we can able to become victorious, hopefully though, but we shall wait and see what happens, especially considering of what the heck what Silver's trying to do. Oh yeah, this is the attack I was talking about. Yeah, it's actually going to get a lot more faster than the forms of how it does in its normal speed, unlike in normal mode. So yeah, I guess that's that. Now, as far as Egg Dragoon boss battle, as far as I'm aware, I believe he does have more hit points as opposed to, like, oh, I don't know, 6 all hits or something like that. Well, hard for me to talk about that personally, because we already know for a fact it's been quite some time since we actually did manage to deal with Egg Dragoon, since, you know, just before we able to actually hit on to the post-game stuff, alongside with the forms of trying to tackle through, you know, hard mode of any other boss battles. So anyway, let's continue things on in terms of celebrating those games with those anniversaries treatment. The next couple of games are Saga 2, or to be more specific than that, Final Fantasy Legend 2 for the Game Boy. I believe that game is going to be celebrating the 35th anniversary, so yeah, since in 1990. And on the subject, when it comes to 25th anniversary, another one of those games is going to be celebrating its 25th anniversary, and that game was Star Wars Episode 1, Battle for Naboo, which I never actually heard about that game before, especially about the fact that Sonic did tell me about this, that back in a long time ago, that we used to have Star Wars Episode 1 Racer for the Nintendo 64, but unfortunately though we no longer have that game anymore, just because obviously though we're trying to able to think about the final Nintendo 64 game we can probably try to get at some point in the future, just before we're able to start focusing on purchasing on something else. But either way, there goes the hard mode of Silver's boss battle, and gee, that boss is a lot trickier than the forms of how it does in on normal mode, like I said before, just because, well, the ending section is kind of tricky, you know? But anyway, so now we're done with that, and now let's move on to the hard mode of Egg Dragoon, and so much so that it's gonna get much more longer than the forms of how it does it on the normal boss battles. So I think the music tracks we're able to actually choose for this point, and so much so we'll try to find where is it? Oh yeah, there it is. Endless Possibilities, because obviously though that music will be a perfect fit, despite the fact that it only plays during the ending of Sonic Unleashed. So as a result, yeah, I guess that makes it totally obvious that we somehow choose the music based off on the likes of the boss battle from Sonic Unleashed. So even though it's a shame that you can't choose your music in the background on the 3DS version of Sonic Generation, sadly though, just because you're pretty much stuck with the forms of just one song as has been currently been chosen for one of those levels you're able to go into in particular. So yeah, apart from those aside things though, this boss battle remains the same, and it's also worth noting for too, they now added in several spikes on the rail grinding section. So yeah, it's definitely a lot more trickier than the forms of how it does on the first time around on normal mode. So, but hopefully though, third time lucky I guess when it comes to trying to succeed this boss battle. But then again, we'll have to wait and see as soon as we're able to... jeez, I keep on messing things up with that particular specific jump right there. But, oh well, no big deal. But at the very least though, it's about the fact that I don't mind when it comes to like... can I just... Okay, there we go. At least I did somehow take a hit right there. Anyways though, another one of those games is going to be also celebrating its 20th anniversary, at least in North America anyway. And that game was Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, which I've never actually heard about that game before, but I do know for the fact that, like I said before, that game was only existence in the American version's release, because I do notice there was no European release of the game, at least for I've noted of what I sort of noticing that. But then again though, I apologize if my commentary is a little bit messy sometimes, because honestly, in terms of like something new is about to be coming up, I have nothing else to talk about. Well, apart from the fact that I'm sure that Blaze the Cat will definitely talk more details about other stuff worth noting for during at some point in this weekend, so yeah, stay tuned for that. So anyways though, another one of those games is also going to be celebrating its 35th anniversary, and that's what appears to be Act Riser for the Super Famicom, at least what I've noticed in this already, because I do somehow saw that familiar 4-color icons with all that particular different shapes and combine that into its official logo for Super Famicom, or technically Super Nintendo, in the European version most likely. Because obviously though, they share the exact same color buttons as the Japanese Super Famicom. So anyway, and the final game is going to be celebrating 35th anniversary for this year, and that's what appears to be the original Pilot Wings for the Super Nintendo. So yeah, Pilot Wings is going to be 35 years old during at some point until, I would classify as saying at some point until December in 2025, despite the fact that Pilot Wings did originally came out in 1990 for the Super Nintendo, which I suppose that's one of the launch titles for the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom if you lived in Japan. So yeah, I guess that's all I can really talk about. In terms of the forms of the final few games is going to be celebrating its anniversary treatment in regards of the forms of 2025. And meanwhile, once we make our way to 2026, that will be obviously going to be the 35th anniversary of the existence of Sonic the Hedgehog, obviously. And meanwhile, we also get able to expect to celebrate the release of, well, as I say, the 30th anniversary of the game's release of Donkey Kong Country 3 for the Super Nintendo. But that again though, that particular topic can wait though, once we make our way to 2026, but that won't be for a very, very long time. Especially because we're still on the first month of, 2025, which is of course January. So, but anyways though, yeah, I got nothing else to say, I'm afraid. So either way, let's just go and try to take care of the forms of Egg Dragoon from now on though. And I get the feeling he's almost down, but then again though, he does have more hit points than the forms of how it does on some amount of hit points from normal mode. So I think that's the only difference is, aside from the fact that he also managed able to realize that the ice attacks is actually going to get a lot more chaotic. And not to mention though, the rail grinding section is actually going to get a lot of spikes involved. But aside from all that stuff though, this battle itself is not too shabby for the most part. But it's just about the fact you're gonna have to watch out for several attacks, just like the forms of how it does on the normal mode. And I think this might actually be the final blowout for Egg Dragoon, as far as we can able to hopefully try and attack on him. And there it goes. And a perfect way to end things off with this boss battle because of this cutscene right there. So still very satisfying to boot, despite the fact on the remastered version of that particular cutscene, as you know, did somehow felt a bit kind of weird translation, which is especially noticeable concerning for the fact that, as we already know, Ian Flynn was responsible for the sake of the forms of rewriting the dialogue. So yeah, it feels a little bit out of place when it comes to the forms of that line differences, at least you probably already expect at this point. Now, before we end off the video right here, let me quickly go ahead and grind for the last bunch of extra lives, despite the fact that we've lost a couple of them journey forms of not only for Shadow's rival battle, but alongside with Silver's rival battle, as well as the Egg Dragoon boss battle. So, yeah, we'll pretty much get to save that particular collection room at some point until, let's just say, on the extra video, alongside with this statue room. And it's now going to be as a pressable button, as opposed to, like, holding down a button for about a few seconds. I suppose that particular topic can't wait, though, once we make our way to the extra episode in terms of the remastered version of Sonic Generations. So, yeah, with that being said, Bugs, we somehow made our way to the final stretch in Sonic Generations Remaster. So with that being said, is that we get endings off here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic X Shadow Generations, while we're still playing through Sonic Generations Remaster, is that we're about to be taking on the final boss in the game, which appears to be the worst boss battle in the entire 3D Sonic games, which is Time Eater. So I'll see you guys until on Monday.